So our first our keynote for today is the amazing Dr. Jessica Hutchings. E te whaia tēnā koe, her kaupapa hua parakore, a kaupapa Māori pathway for Māori soil and food sovereignty, which is something that's right up my alley at the moment. Just FYI whaia, we just finished the 64-meter first food forest row here at my kāinga, so I'm so looking forward to your keynote. Dr. Jessica Hutchings has a PhD in environmental studies. She holds leadership and governance role in the Māori science and research sector and is a widely published author. If you haven't read her books, go in there, whānau. Dr. Hutchings has been working at the crossroads of Indigenous knowledge, whānau and environmental well-being for the last 2 decades. She works in the Māori science sector where she holds a number of governance and senior leadership roles, including a member of the MBIE Science Board and is also the Treaty Relationship Manager for the Biological Heritage National Science Challenge. She has been a member of Te Waka Kaiora, the National Māori Organics Authority for the last 2 decades and is a Hua Parakore verified producer on her amazing, we've been there, it's awesome, her amazing small whānau food farm just north of Upper Hutt. She is passionate about Māori soil and food sovereignty and growing the next generation of rangatahi to be Hua Parakore food farmers. Today's kaupapa explores that, Hua Parakore, a kaupapa Māori pathway for Māori soil and food sovereignty. So e te whaia, e te manukura, tēnei rā te mihi kia koe, nau mai anō ki tēnei whare kōrero au a tātou, and we're so excited to hear what you have to say. Tēnā koe, anei te rā kau kōrero karawhiua.
Tēnā koe kāwati, kia koutou katoa, mihi atu kia koutou I tēnei ata, ki te kaikareki no I whakatīmata te hui, nei mihi atu kia koe. Ki te whānau o te toi tangata, he tino mihi kia koutou, koutou hei whakamana, ngā tikanga, ngā reo, ngā momo kaupapa e pāna te oranga o ngā whānau me ngā uri whakatipu, e mihi atu kia koutou. Ko wai ahau, ko ai he whāngai o Ngāi Tahu me Ngāti Huirapu kei e tahi atu taha no India toku māma no Gujarati ia. Ai ko Dr. Jessica Hutchings ahau. Ai ka noho ai kei kaituki I tētahi pāmu iti, he pāmu Hua Parakore, ko tingo te pāmu ko papa whakarito. Ko tēnei te tino kaupapa o te pāmu ki te whakarito. Mihi atu kia koutou. Ai, ka huri au ki te reo Pākehā nai nei. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm feeling very humbled with the awesome kai kōrero matua that you've had. I was saying to my partner this morning, I'm not sure how I got invited to this hui. Feeling very humble. Both with all of the speakers who have come before, but also too of the work of Toi Tangata to uplift kaupapa Māori in multiple spaces. So thank you, mihi atu kia koutou. Today I'm going to have a kōrero around seeding Māori soil and food sovereignty through Hua Parakore, and bear with, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. So seeding Māori soil and food sovereignty through Hua Parakore. And in this kōrero, I want to talk a little bit about how I'm coming to understand what Māori soil and food sovereignty is. And I want to share this kaupapa of Hua Parakore with you. It's such a privilege and opportunity to mahi on behalf of Te Waka Kaiora, National Māori Organics Group. I've been involved with them for a couple of decades now. And to really elevate this kaupapa of Māori organics, or what we're calling Hua Parakore. So I'll take you through the development journey of this kaupapa Māori first Indigenous organic verification framework anywhere in the world. Already picked up by an amazing Indigenous farm in Hawaii called Ma'o Farm. Some of you might have heard of it, doing wonderful things with the development of Indigenous community supported agriculture, supporting rangatahi through college, providing living wages for people, and most importantly, providing the opportunity to share Hua Parakore Kai back through Indigenous rangatahi, back through their whānau. So it really is a fabulous model of Māori soil and food sovereignty. Okay, so I just wanted to give a bit of a context about where we are from. Papa Whakaretoreto, we're up in Kaitoki, just north of Upper Hutt, just below the Rimutaka Hills. So we're not growing in the fertile soils of South Auckland or in the heat of the far north. These photos were taken in August. I think one day we have uinuku and the next day we have snow on our whenua. So it's a really challenging place to grow. Our aspiration up here and how we practice our mahi mara is really along the lines of food sovereignty. We are working really hard to do bio-intensive polycropping and gardening, working with the Hua Parakore kaupapa. I've practiced biodynamics for a couple of decades now, so bringing lots of different tools into our kiti around the Hua Parakore. But these are some photos from our farm, just to give a bit of a context. The COVID world and online often makes us feel, or definitely makes me feel, very distant from people. And Kawati, lovely that you've been here and have a sense of this place. This is us in August, lots of rain. We're in River Valley floor. Successive floodings over 6 weeks. What that does to the soil is that there's nowhere for the water to go once it gets waterlogged. The pasture's waterlogged. You know, thinking about animal welfare in the middle of the night is running down and trying to move stock. But why this is important for us is we have an aspiration to, in that bottom photo down there, is to sow that paddock in a syntropic food forest planting. So what Kawati was talking about, you know, suitable for our climate down here as well. But this photo and this observation and living on the land, we've been here for 16 years now, tells me that actually, you know, this little bit of land here is probably best suited to the re-establishment of some type of wetland or a pond system. So just always learning and always understanding from the whenua what's best with the lightest touch. How can we work with Te Aotearoa and, you know, through our observations that we build up. I've been here for a long time and I've never seen that bottom paddock flood, and these were floods where we actually lost half a paddock on the other side of the river, just totally washed away. So I think with climate change, trying to hold on to the changing observations and working out what that means for our food and farming practices going forward is something that we just do on a daily basis because we're out in the mara and out on the farm every day. So this was taken in August at the start of putting in a new bed. We've put 4 new beds in and we're polycropping all of them. These are now looking much more abundant than this. As you can imagine, in August, not much is grown. We're still in the middle of winter here. The weed mat you can see in the far distance is the beginnings of the preparation for a new garden bed. And interestingly enough, we just had a soil test back where there's too much organic matter in the soil, which you'd think would be a good thing, but actually what it does is it puts the microbiology of the soil out of balance. So our initial method for, after we've killed the grass off, which is why that black tarp or weed mat is down there, was to put cardboard down and then to put 10 centimetres of compost on top. But what that's going to do is it's just going to overload and increase the organic matter in the soil. So now we're taking a totally different approach and we're going to put a 5 species mixed cover crop over that. And then we're going to plant straight into it in a couple of months' time. So that will give the soil the best start. It'll mean that we are enhancing soil microbiology without increasing organic matter by the application of too much compost. So again, learnings and leaning into people with other expertise. We're actually really privileged to work with some amazing food farmers, Tangata Tiriti, Pākehā Allies, who food farm at Kaicycle, which is the urban food farm in Wellington City. And it's great to build relationships with people who have experience and do this in their everyday, growing food at scale to support community through community supported agriculture. We've got a vision up here on the farm to develop an Indigenous Huaparakuri community-supported agriculture seedling seedling boxes, where we're growing up the best seedlings for whānau Māori into Awakairangi and over in the Wairarapa, that we can share out with them so that they can get their gardens going. So we've only just come to that, and you know, really I think it's through thinking about what our contribution is into restoring Māori food systems. And I think growing seedlings, which politics-wise is really important, because seed sovereignty goes with soil sovereignty, goes with food sovereignty, and being at the starting of that process to be able to support whānau Māori, I think is the contribution that we can make. Yeah, so our new Māra, you know, we're thinking about things like where's the sun, where's the prevailing wind, it is an exposed site, there's been no previous garden bed there. It's in zone 1 for people who do permaculture, so it's right by the house. It does have a bit of flooding and high rain, but it's not down by the river, so it won't get washed away. Pests, our daily thing, can add cats, pūkeko, birds in there. That's just ongoing for us, trapping and being on top of that. And the purpose of our Māra is kai sovereignty and a Huaparakuri teaching Māra. So our next steps are just to keep planning and recording. We really want to understand for us on our farm, and we feed probably 4 whānau houses from our farm. My mum lives on the property, got other whānau around as well who we share food with. Really wanting to understand how much food do you need to grow for this many people, and what are the successions and the plantings that you need to do to ensure a continued supply of kai. So this is all for us as part of planning, and we want to really understand that, put that into curriculum, and then share that through running courses up here. And for us, this Māra is dedicated to Hinea Hone, and you know, we're taking the, I'll say, liberty of writing karakia, of re-narrating, re-indigenising our relationship back with the soil, back with Hinea Hone, through developing our own reo, tikanga and mātauranga in relation to our Māra kai practices. So just a few more photos of some of the growing stuff that we're doing. We're polycropping, which means that there's more than one crop. What that does is that ensures, if you think about planting multiple species, as you can see in this photo, what you've got then under the soil is a diversity of root systems. Fennel, as we know, has that kind of tap root that goes down, and then these other feeder roots that grow off it. Lettuces, you know, they can burrow quite deeply. The radicchios behind it have a different type of root structure. There's some cornflowers and some wildflower mix planted along the edges there, and behind that there's some brassicas as well. So the diversity above the soil, look at the image in terms of height, size, shape, colour, is all mirrored in the root structure below the soil. And what that does is that provides a diverse environment for soil microbiology to absolutely thrive. And when we plant monocrops, so one single species of crops, we actually are not taking advantage of replenishing the soil and working with the soil in a way through growing that it can really be enhanced. And so polycropping for us, multiple species, varying heights. Of course, you've got to be aware of companion plantings, only a few things that don't do very well together, is the path that we're taking. In a Huaparakuri framework, I think about this as whakapapa, I think about this as intergenerational, and I think about this as whanaungatanga plantings. You might have heard the words guild plantings. This could also too be seen as a guild planting, and we're very much working within that framework of developing 1 metre square guilds and then just repeating that up the garden beds and up the garden beds. So this idea of planting in whānau groupings that do really well together, and we know this because it's part of our tikanga. Ground cover, never leave the dirt unprotected. As I'm looking at this image now, I know from my soil test I've got high organic matter in the soil, and I've got high carbon content, which is good, but it's out of balance for growing. I mean, we're really wanting to draw down carbon into the soil. That's one of the reasons why we're doing polycropping, to kind of draw down and suck in that carbon back into Hineahone and Papatūānuku, so they can hold it and it's not released into the atmosphere, contributing to climate change. And so ground cover is a really good way to do that, because I think what you've got to think about is that the leaves of a plant, I think of them as like solar panels, and their total job is to reach up to the sun to photosynthesize and to bring that energy down back through the plant and back into the roots. So the more leaves we have above the ground, the more energy, foods and nutrients that plant can then draw down into the soil to feed the microbiology, to contribute to really good soil health. So just a note here, I'm changing my practice of using mulch on the garden. Different schools of thoughts around this. Mulch has high fungal activity, but often that doesn't get, I won't go into it, but just find it very interesting, you know, for 15, 16 years while we've been up here, I've been working with various techniques, and then you meet new people and come to know other ways of growing and tending the soil, and you change your method. So just for me, learning is always, always ongoing. And I suppose the, you know, how do I know when we've been successful, or the process of it? It's really just about daily observation. You know, what am I observing in the garden? What am I feeling? Have I connected in with my divine senses? So I just wanted to, I'm just going to cue the film to be played. Just before that is played, I just want to introduce it. I've chosen to show a little short film that came out this year. It's only about 8-9 minutes long. It was made by Happens Films, who are two Pākehā filmmakers who have a great YouTube channel, Happens Films, and they make a whole lot of films around permaculture. But more recently, they have moved into thinking about what's their role as tangata tiriti to elevate Māori food stories and kaupapa Māori practices. So it was actually a year of negotiation, cross-cultural negotiation with me, sussing them out and working out whether or not we wanted to work with them before agreeing to proceed with the film. It's lovely for my partner and I and our whānau to see the farm through somebody else's eyes, Jordan, who was behind the camera. And this film will just give you a really good introduction into the Hua Parakore and how we live Indigenous food sovereignty in the everyday on our farm. So cue the film.
Whai, just while Turo is sussing out our audio for that, we just had a couple of questions coming through. Turo, bro, I'll let you just give us a indication as to when the sound's going to work. But just while we wait, have you got any tikanga around the composting fertilizer, kararehe?
Yes. Slurries, poo slurries, definitely. Of course, for us, making sure that we're using Māori knowledge is intergenerational. Māori knowledge is an intergenerational knowledge form. It's developed in place through intergenerational observation and connection with the land. And that connection with the land is really about being co-producers and co-creators with nature. So not above nature, but actually being a part of nature. Kia ora tēnā koutou. Ko Jessica Hutchings ahau, ko ai he uri o Ngai Tahu me Ngāti Huirapa, kei etahi atu taha no India tōku mama no Gujarati ia. Ai, kei te noho ai kai konei, kei te tahi pāmu iti ko Papa Whakarito Rito. So I hail from the tribe of Ngai Tahu down in the South Island, Te Waipounamu in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And on the other side, I'm from Gujarat, India. Sometimes I'm known as a Mindian, a Māori Indian. And I live on a little whānau food farm, little family food farm, just north of Wellington with my wife Jo, my dog Tahi, and my mum who lives in a little whare just over there in the house next door. So the Hua Parakuri system was developed by Te Waka Kaiora, the National Māori Organics Collective in Aotearoa, and it's the first Indigenous verification system for certifying or verifying pure kai, organic kai, but using Indigenous values, Māori principles and Māori understandings of how to produce natural food. So hua literally means a product, and parakuri literally means free from rubbish or harm or toxic waste or chemicals. So hua parakuri, you could understand it in English as organics, but for us we're not using a Western model to try and come back to Indigenous understanding, so it just is hua parakuri. It's a framework now, and it's been picked up by Māori organic growers, soil scientists, it's been picked up by cooks, by fermenters, so it's used kind of right across the food system as a way to bring Indigenous values into kai. So the Hua Parakuri sits within a Māori worldview, so we can actually use the Hua Parakuri principles or values to help us think about what that worldview is. That worldview is interconnected, it's holistic, it doesn't privilege humans over nature. Something that's really important to understand about the Māori worldview is that it is a complete and valid way of living as Māori and of understanding the world. And one of the impacts of colonisation for Indigenous peoples all over the world was that our knowledges were seen as primitive, as savage, as naive, as not worthy, as not scientific. But we have hundreds of years of scientific knowledge as Māori through intergenerational observation and practices of gathering and collecting kai moana or kai from the environment. So it's not a theoretical framing of the natural world for Māori, it's actually a lived reality for us, and we're living it every day. The Hua Parakuri differs from the other current 4 organic verification schemes in New Zealand because it's Māori, because it provides an Indigenous pathway, a kaupapa Māori pathway for Māori growers to tell a Māori story about their food production. And that is so important. The process for the Hua Parakuri is kaupapa Māori driven, so it's really relational, and having been both certified organic with Organic Farm NZ and then also too being Hua Parakuri verified, there's just stark differences in the processes between Hua Parakuri and the other Western certification systems. And an example of that is in Western certification, organic certification systems, I fill out paperwork, send off an email, an auditor comes out, I might be a different auditor from year to year. It's on the farm for 3 or 4 hours, he or she's read the paperwork, and then we go for a walk around the farm and they've gone. But with the Hua Parakuri, we're actually about building communities and building communities which are resilient, which are transformational. And so when this farm received its full Hua Parakuri verification, we had a hui of about 60 to 70 people up here. It was really kind of like almost gaining collective consent. You know, we walked around the farm, we
had people from the Māori Organics group with us who asked questions in relation to the kaupapa. Then we had other Māori people there steeped in mātauranga Māori and te reo who were also too asking us questions. And so in lots of ways it's a learning framework. We get to ask these questions and we get to respond, but then other people who have come to that hui or that final verification get to add their whakaaro or their thoughts as well. It takes a full 3 years to become Hua Parakore verified. And it's a community process. You know, we're bringing people along with us. We're strengthening our own knowledge systems. We're building our own ways and understandings of how to be growers within our own cultural practices to tell our own kaupapa Māori stories in Aotearoa. Māori food sovereignty isn't something that we achieve as a one-off. It really is a way of life. It's about connecting with our food system. It's about understanding our food system. It's about activating our politics around the global food system and about demonstrating resistance. It's about engaging again with kind of diverse local economies so that we can restore and rebuild the food systems from which our tūpuna lived and from which we come from. So there's lots of layers to Māori food sovereignty. One, it's on that personal level of actually, you know, needing to decolonise our food system and our gut and the way that we approach food. But it's also too at a systems level within community, rebuilding our cultural landscapes. And then of course it's at that political level, which is really important that we can activate at that political level. Māori knowledge systems and whakapapa is not about this very reductive understanding of the world where we shut things down and say, oh, this is ours, this is ours, this is our way of knowing. The Hua Parakore framework and way of being is a healing way of being. And so really we want to bring as many people into it as we can. Pākehā can support Māori food sovereignty by becoming really strong allies. And that's not just in food sovereignty, that's in ngā mea katoa, in everything. To become good treaty partners, to become tangata tiriti in Aotearoa is a really important role for Pākehā to take. And if we think about Māori worldviews as being interconnective and inclusive, and the notion of whakapapa as moving out, you know, and bringing people in, that's really what we're wanting to do in the Hua Parakore. You know, we've got a vision for Aotearoa of having Hua Parakore farms and food producers all across the country connecting up and returning us back to eat our cultural landscapes again.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our film about Hua Parakore.
The interview with Jessica was so inspiring and packed full of information that we couldn't possibly fit it all into this film. So we've released her 1-hour interview up on our channel for you to check out. Link is in the description.
So while we were researching the film, we read 2 of Jessica's books, which are a great resource for understanding the Hua Parakore framework better. Links to these are in the description as well.
So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all in the next film.
Kia ora anō koutou. Am I still sharing my screen or do I need to do something here?
Got to share it again, Whaia.
Okay, ka pai, kia ora. Dun, 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 dun. Ka pai. Ka pai, well, kia ora anō tātou. Always a bit whakamā to be the one to share the film. It's okay doing it and then releasing it out and going, oh, well, whoever sees it, sees it. But I think taking the opportunity to share the work, both of Happens Films, but also to, for me, not being able to have you all up on our whenua or to be with you all in person, it's just really important to be able to talk from our standpoint of our whenua up here, of which we are manuhiri in our rohe, and definitely not seeing ourselves as kaitiaki at all, but just manuhiri in the rohe of ngā uri o Taranaki whānui, rangitane me kahungunu hoki. So just to pick up on some of those threads in the film, you know, Māori food sovereignty, and some of you might have heard me say this before, I really think of it as a way to return to eat our cultural landscapes. And so when I say that, you know, what are our cultural landscapes, especially for my wife and I, we both are living outside of our rohi. Now we're living in someone else's rohi as manuhiri, disconnected on some levels. So what does that mean when we return to eat our cultural landscape? And that's not a knowing straight away, that's in that process of coming to know what our cultural landscape is, of reacquainting ourselves with Hiniahuoni, with Papatua Nuku, with Tāne Mahuta again, to be able to reinvigorate some of those kai Māori that our tūpuna ate. Food sovereignty, I've said in relation to the kaupapa of Te Aotearoa in the Hua Parakore, it's about the practice of ensuring food secure futures for whānau, independent of multinational and national food systems and in harmony with the natural world. I really strongly believe that any tweaking of the food system still within that capitalist framework will not actually take us on the journey to Māori food sovereignty. Our food system is completely broken at the moment. COVID has highlighted just how vulnerable that food system is. And it's really those global flows of capitalism in which food, you know, fertilizers, seeds, pesticides, genetically modified seeds, all of those types of biotechnologies in agriculture, nanotechnologies in agriculture, synbio in agriculture, all of those inputs, we'll call them, circulate on global flows that mimic the flows of capitalism, where money flows and how money moves. So our food system is absolutely interwoven with that. And if we're thinking about achieving Māori food sovereignty within that system, my really strong belief is that we can't fix that. You know, capitalism is in bed with colonialism. And so in order for us to decolonise our food system and rebuild Māori food systems, we really need to step right outside of it. So working in different economies, diverse economies, our own Māori economies again, is really important to restoring Māori food systems. In terms of soil sovereignty and elevating the mana of Hiniahuoni, this is something that's just with me all the time at the moment in the mahi that we're doing outside on the farm. You know, in what ways do our farming and food practices elevate the mana of Hiniahuoni? How can we tread really lightly on her and with her? How can we be that nature being with Hiniahuoni, with Papa Tuanuku that I talked about in the film? And we've seen that with the elevation of the Urewera and Te Awatipua, Whanganui, through being granted personhood status, and a different type of management system then ensuing over the management of these entities that have been given personhood status. What if we were to elevate the mana of Hiniahuoni to actually give her personhood status? Our decisions around where we build houses, where we build roads, where we take topsoil from for development would be completely different. How we farm would be completely different. So elevating the mana of Hiniahuoni. Soil for us, of course, is located within our complex woven universe, to quote Māori Marsden, the woven universe. In soil sovereignty, I'm not even going to read that quote out, but we did publish a book last year, which is an anthology, so an edited collection of diverse kōrero from Māori around these soil practices, all the way, you know, engaging from rangatahi kōrero right through to our kaumātua kōrero. So these are the books that were mentioned in the film, and I'm a researcher by heart. I call myself sometimes a recovering academic. Gave 15 years to the Colonial Institution of Victoria University. And I really believed that it was a place for emancipation and a place for our knowledge to grow. And this was in the 90s. And then, you know, the colonial structures of these white institutions that are actually complicit in the colonisation and subjugation of our knowledges to retell them in ways that suit the colonial agenda is just something that you can't dismantle inside those institutions. And, you know, I mihi to those Māori academics that are still hanging on in that university sector. But I've chosen, I suppose, to move out of that, and with a lot more freedom to be able to choose what I want to do and how I want to tell stories. So for me, research and writing is always ongoing. very lucky last year to be awarded a Te Aparangi Marsden grant on a new 3-year project called Kaiatua Food for Hope and Wellbeing, where we are profiling Māori kai producers who are working within their own diverse food systems with their own Māori communities, to kind of give a bit of an overview, one around the diversity of what Māori are doing, to inspire the rest of us that we can do it with whānau and with community to create our own food systems, but also to, really importantly, to collate our own pūrākau in relationship to Māori food stories, and to be the teller of those stories. So if people are interested in purchasing those books, there's a link on my website under books and offerings for both of those books. And just to note that there's some beautiful recipes at the back of both of them, developed by Greta Carney from Hapi in Napier, which some people might know of, that beautiful cafe. So the Hua Parakore system, this is the tohu that you receive when you are fully verified, that can go on your farm gate, that you can be on products as well. So Kathy Tate Jamison's By Farm Yogurt, you would have seen in the film, had the little Hua Parakore tohu, and she exports. So this tohu makes it into the Australian supermarkets as well. The Hua Parakore is based on that woven universe, and this beautiful image from Teresa Dayhunter, I think, just really speaks to our worldview, you know, probably all of our worldview in this hui this morning. And this is the, you know, what we're really upholding in relationship to the Hua Parakore and unfolding it at the same time. So the Hua Parakore has 6 kaupapa. It was developed through a 3-year kaupapa Māori research project by the Māori Organics Group, Te Waka Kaiora, and we literally ran hui all around the motu for about a year, and we worked really closely with the Rongoa Collective, National Māori Rongoa Collective as well. Because if we're talking about rongoa, our rongoa practitioners, we're really advocating the need for Hua Parakore, or clean rongoa that hasn't been sprayed, free from pesticides, chemicals, all of those types of things. As a result of the hui around the motu, we probably surfaced over 100 kaupapa. And as a research team, they're all, you know, we're having a wānanga with our kaumatua to look at everything that had surfaced, to try and understand how would you pull this thinking together into an Indigenous verification framework. And I'll just pause here just to explain why we're using the words verification and validation and not certification like other organic standards. And our kaumatua, who sadly passed away a few years ago, Percy Tipene, was really clear that it's not Te Waka Kaiora's role, and it's actually nobody's role, to certify anybody else's tikanga in relationship to what they're doing on their own whenua with regard to kai production practices. So we've called it validation and verification. So really what we do is Te Waka Kaiora, we provide that ako framework for people to come into the system and to learn about it. And then we come along and we validate and we verify. So we're not certifying. Different kai producers have different ways that they express these kaupapa within their kai production practices. What we did though, when we developed the system, is we mapped the New Zealand Organic Standard to it. So it means that our Hua Parakore verified producers can call themselves organic under the New Zealand Organic Standard, as well as being Hua Parakore. So for example, the kaupapa of whakapapa would, you know, for us on the farm is about understanding where our seed, well, first of all, understanding where we're standing, on whose land are we standing. And then if I think about it in relation to seed, where are our seeds coming from? Do I know the whakapapa of that seed, of these seeds? How do I look after them? What's our kawa around seed? So it just gives us a really different way to think about kai production practices, whereas in Western organics you would get questions in your forms such as, please describe the storage methods for, you know, seeds. And so it's devoid from having a relationship with that actual seed, or seeds. It's more about just in a very perfunctory way understanding the method. And my politics led me to becoming Organic Farm NZ certified because I'm a strong activist against genetic modification in food and the environment, and actually did my PhD in this area. Anyway, I'll leave it there because I could go down this list and I better keep moving on. But I do just want to go through these kaupapa just to give you a little bit of an understanding of how we might use these kaupapa to think about kai production within the Huapara Kore framework. And I here am looking at soil. So I've applied all of these kaupapa to surface some questions in relationship to soil. So ngā tikanga o whakapapa in the Huapara Kore framework gives us this opportunity to be able to connect to Hineahone as a divine being, as a deity in her own right. Contributes to building new Māori knowledge as applied to soils in specific areas. So for example, you know, there's national databases in Aotearoa around soils, but those databases, they're not closed off, but they're not developed in a way where we would be able to easily access or know the questions to ask to be able to access information about the soils and the areas that we're all living in. So the whakapapa kaupapa in relation to soils gives us this opportunity to actually place our pūrākau and our whakapapa kōrero back to the soils. And that's a process again, isn't it? That's about hui and wānanga and building that knowledge collectively. This would be something that wouldn't even be a part of Western Organics. And actually, when I did try and bring kaupapa Māori into my responses into that Pākehā framework, they just don't know what to do with it. And I just decided, oh, well, I'm not sharing any of this information. But it was almost like, you know, you leave a part of yourself behind when there isn't room for kaupapa Māori spaces within these systems. And it just, you know, I just think it's such a contradiction for organics to not be working with Indigenous peoples, or for organics in Aotearoa not to have a space for Indigenous peoples. So if we talk about wairua, this is really about health and safety, or peace and safety, but in the organic standard, it maps to the health and safety kaupapa. But in relation to soil, it connects a producer to the soil beyond the soil as a resource-based input into a production system, to soil as being revered and sacred. So soil is our silent ally in the food system, and she has no voice. And so our job really, you know, I mean, for me as a Huapara Kore producer, I really see my job as advocating for the rights of soil. I think, you know, when soil does have a voice, she's exasperated, she's burned out, there's nothing left in her. And that's when we start to have conversations about soil degradation or soil remediation. So, you know, what voice do you want to speak up on behalf of Hineahone, because she's really needing it. Our soils, they say globally, we only have about 60 harvests left around the world globally, 60 harvests. And that's because of the degradation that's happening to our topsoil, but it's also too due to the absolutely fast rate of decline in topsoil being available to actually grow things on. So degradation and decline of topsoil. So mana, in the Huapara Kore, we think about this as mana, but it also too maps in that Western organic sense to the kaupapa of social justice. So how do you uplift the mana of soil? I've already talked about this. Enhancing the well-being or the mauri of the soil, how do we do that? In terms of mauri, enhancing the mauri or the life force of the soil, and Kawati just asked me a question before about animal manure going into the compost. And so composting is something that we do all the time here. It's always probably, I think, 4 compost piles outside at the moment at different stages of breaking down. And that really is a process of enhancing the mauri of the soil. But portion, I think I've been making too much compost, and I think we've been doing a little bit too much because we've got too high organic matter to, that actually will throw that soil microbiology out of balance. So we need to not only understand the soil, you know, and our relationship with Hini Ahawani to rebuild all of that and to bring all of those pūrākau back. And I'm also advocating for really understanding and reaching over to understand the soil science, to understand what happens when soils have this level of chemical composition versus this level, and to think about how do we really understand that whole woven universe. And by crikey, it's bigger than anything else above the earth. How do we understand that whole woven universe that's below the soil? There's more there's more microbiology in a teaspoon of soil in terms of numbers than there are people on the planet. The amount of microscopic life and microbiology in a teaspoon of soil is phenomenal. More outweighs the number of people on the planet. So how can we really begin to understand our relationship with soil? Te ao tūroa, so, you know, these will all be very familiar to people. Practicing kaitiakitanga, building soil diversity, fertility and health. Emphasis on maintaining and enhancing that natural order. So it's really lovely to see regenerative agriculture kind of emerge as this thing that people are saying is new, and we're going to transition to all of these great practices. But actually, these are practices that Indigenous peoples have been using all over the world for generations and generations. You know, regenerative agriculture, the Hua Parakore system, biodynamics are all kai production systems that maintain and work with the natural order, where we can actually see ourselves as being nature beings. In Māramatanga, understand it how you like. Sometimes I talk about it as enlightenment, but this idea of coming to know. And I really love the kōrero from our kaumātua around re-indigenizing our senses, focusing on cultivating our divine senses to smell, feel, or spelling mistake, and register the vibration of soil in order to lift the mana and the mauri of the soil. I think that's probably the biggest decolonizing outcome, on top of, you know, having heaps of kai, beautiful Hua Parakore kai in the house, but actually this idea of coming back to know ourselves through our divine Indigenous senses. And our kaumātua talk about this time and time again. And this is where I suppose people might say, oh, that's anecdotal evidence, that won't be part of a certification. It's Hua Parakore is not really robust. And we know as Indigenous peoples that we trust our frameworks, that we trust our tikanga, we trust our mātauranga, we lean into it to come back to know who we are as Indigenous peoples. And so this kaupapa of Māramatanga for me is probably all of the other kaupapa, mana, mauri, wairua, te ao tūroa, whakapapa, you know, all contribute to Māramatanga, to be able to have that understanding through our divine senses that what we're doing is working with, a part of being, and a reconnection to Ngā Atua Māori. So the Hua Parakore, we call it a korowai, and is awarded in your third year of implementing Ngā tikanga, so Hua Parakore tikanga on your farm. And it's 3 years to become fully Hua Parakore verified, because that's really how long it takes to be able to transition soils and farming practices, to begin to bed them in and to see that change. And like Western Organics, you complete paperwork similar to a farm management plan, which is really, really helpful. We all need to record everything in kai production and farming. But what we're offering here is a kaupapa Māori framework to be able to do that, and a community to be able to do it with from around the motu. I think I've already, maybe this is the double up of a slide. I think I've already mentioned this, but I just want to pick up on this point around genetic modification in the second paragraph down here. And I want to pick up on this point again is because 20 years on from the Royal Commission on Genetic Modification that happened in 2000 or 2001. And genetic modification is stirring again. We see it stirring in the predator-free movement with the exploration of gene editing in possums as a potential tool for eradicating possums from Aotearoa. And I think the only thing that's stopping Aotearoa from moving forward in that is that if a possum was, if we gene edited a possum and then that possum somehow or another found its way to Australia, where it is one of their taonga species, then that would have an absolutely devastating impact on that population. So it's almost like there is colonial amnesia, and I'm not surprised, it happens often, doesn't it? Colonial amnesia to all of the kōrero, all of the objections, all of the protest and activism work that we engaged in 20 years ago around Māori views around genetic modification and kind environment. And we're having to circle back round again 20 years later to say the same things over and over again. We also too know that GE was, you know, a big impetus for the Y262 claim in its initial filing, and the use of genetic materials of Te Aotearoa. So genetic modification, definitely, you know, operating in that political level where we can be very clear, and for us in Te Waka Kaiora, absolutely unwavering about it. And I think it's really important that these Māori organisations that take a stand on that. While at the same time, some Māori and some Māori groups and iwi are exploring this space and going, well, you know, maybe for us as an iwi, this is something that is part of our development paradigm. For us in Te Waka Kaiora and in Huaparakore, it's definitely not something that's within part of our system, and it's actually something that we're going to have to rally again to elevate our kōrero into that political setting to ensure that our opposition is again noted. So in terms of just coming back to soil, in terms of soil, the Huaparakore has been used now as a soil health framework. We managed to get it woven in to some recent work that MFE, Ministry for the Environment, have been doing, and a big project that's been on the go for 5 years led by Manaaki Whenua Landcare Research, who are thinking of developing soil standards, national soil standards for Aotearoa. And we've offered the Huaparakore as a framework with some really clear questions in there to re-indigenise our values within soil as part of a soil health framework for Aotearoa. So just trying to, suppose, drop seeds everywhere within the food system where the Huaparakore framework can be picked up. I feel like this is a double up slide, apologies for that. Yeah, just beautiful images from Teresa Reihana here of Hinea Huone. So she's a whanaunga of Matua Percy's and has just gifted all this beautiful artwork to Te Waka Kaiora. And I think, you know, when we think about how we express our kaupapa, and I'm loving the work of live illustrators that I saw earlier on, coming into our art forms to be able to communicate our relationships, our narratives and our pūrākau is really important. So I'm just sharing some pictures now, some photos just to finish up of some Huaparakore verified producers. Linan Kaiwaka from Whaingaroa, one of our early producers up there, who were awarded the Huaparakore. This is Auntie's Garden, who isn't Huaparakore verified, but I love the beacon really around what communities can achieve. Geneva and Ray, one of our first producers to be awarded, they're in the far north, they were Organic Farm NZ verified for a while, never made sense to them. And then when the Huaparakore came along, they're very keen to adopt it. Geneva's actually the co-chair of the Huaparakore system. And you can see here that it's someone from the community with Te Waka Kaiora support, who's actually awarding the producers the Hua Parakore tohu. So it's not like in Western organics where you don't even get, you just get sent an attachment with your certificate on it that's all been typed up. As I said in the film, this is about whanaungatanga, it's about reconnecting Māori food communities. So in terms of food systems in Hua Parakore, resilient, localised, place-based with a political understanding of that, deeply connected with whānau and community, contributes to food sovereignty, contributes to Māori soil sovereignty. It's about feeding whānau first, including feeding well-being. So yes, we can export, yes, we can think about being producers on the domestic market, but what's the point in doing that if we haven't fed our communities first? It's diverse, it privileges this diverse Māori economies model that people like Sean Awatiri from Manaaki Whenua have written about. You know, that Māori economies happen in all of these different levels, doing all of these diverse things. And so you don't need to participate in the Hua Parakore. So if you wanted to, sorry, what I want to say is if you want to participate in the Hua Parakore, it's open to everybody. You don't even need to be a producer. If you want to participate in it because you're doing Marakai at home or you're starting a marae garden or a work food garden, these are all part of that Māori, diverse Māori economies model, and it's kaupapa Māori. But I think most importantly, it's about mokopuna decision making. You know, how can we as Māori start to feed ourselves again and jump off that global food system and how it circulates? And this is why I've made this last point closed loop. You know, we can close the loop amongst our Māori economies if we want to think about it in that way. For us on the farm, I think about what we're doing as closed loop high production or Hua Parakore food farming, because we source everything from the farm. Got goats and sheep, access to biodynamic cow poo, and so we don't need to bring any inputs in. Occasionally might buy seeds, certified organic seeds from King Seeds, but everything else, I'm trying to think what we might buy, and everything else comes from the farm. Reflections on our system, and this is really more talking about how we run it. You know, like we got Te Waka Kaiora community organisation, mahi aroha, no one's paid, big aspirations to make an intervention and to fracture the current food system in Aotearoa on zero funding and mahi aroha. But I'm sure we can do it because as Māori we seem to do this everywhere. But we need to keep building sustainable infrastructure. And how do you do that? You know, I think when you're a community group and you get a little bit of philanthropic funding here and there, and you can bring some people in and then they leave, how do we keep those skills engaged for this idea of work on so we don't lose those gains that we've made? Succession planning, really important, realising the potential of a system through collaborations. And this is really important. We can't do this by ourselves. I welcome Toi Tangata Whānau to sign up to the Hua Parakore. Think about how you might take this kaupapa and make it your own in your own communities. And it's about restoring modern day Indigenous food stories and telling our own stories. Just a last point on that for me, I think the food stories that are being, Māori food stories that are often being told at the moment are the food poverty in times of COVID. We're seeing it everywhere. But then you go to the other extreme of Māori celebrity chefs, you know, working with Indigenous ingredients. Well, there's a big gap somewhere in the middle in there to be able to do a whole lot of other stuff so that there's more diversity in the stories that are being told. Now, mihi nui kia koutou. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Ka pai. So that's about me just wrapping up my kōrero. I'm really happy to take questions if there's a little bit of time, and just again to thank you all for the mahi that Toi Tangata are doing, the aspirations that you have through all kaupapa Māori pathways to achieve beautiful outcomes for our people, and the commitment that you have with the whenua connect, you know, healthy land, healthy people. And I you know, Kawati, in your introduction, you used a whole lot of words that I wrote down that I was thinking, oh, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah, that's great. Oh, this chimes. And I'm thinking, okay, I am in the right hui. Maybe I should be here. But, you know, mahia atua. This is what we're talking about in the Huaparakore, re-indigenising space, reconnecting, whakapapa, pūrākau, mātauranga, love the kōrero that you shared around Pepe, you know, in those first 12 months, and Pepe being carried around through the Mara. Imagine that imprint of divine senses from the Mara back through to Pepe, you know, by doing that. Maui in a female form, rangatahi breaking the calabash, always up for that. And this notion, I think I'll finish on this, te puawaitanga. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou.
Man, we could have a wānanga, a whole day, whole week on this. Yeah, love it, Whaia. And yeah, just reiterating again the mihi for that kōrero you've given, and I'm really happy actually you finished a bit early your main kōrero, because there's heaps of pātai and I'm sure we're going to get stuck into them. So I'm just going to start from the top te whānau. And pātai whaia, hea ha tō huarahi ki tēnei kaupapa, what's your background, initial motivators to follow this path? What are the steps to take others along towards the same thinking and living? And I know you've talked a lot about this, thinking our whānau within our hapori, so in that community space, what are some of those practical tips potentially? But yeah, any thoughts from that? What you've already talked about?
Yeah, well, just I think my motivator was that probably like many of you, I just feel in, you know, I am nature, you know, we are nature. And so it's just always been something that I've been deeply passionate about, working with Te Taiao and also to elevating kaupapa Māori within that space. But my massive motivation came with the absolute shock and desperation I felt when it felt like GE was coming to Aotearoa and it was going to land in our food systems and in our seeds. And I can't think of anything else more violent than tampering with the absolute start of life at a seed, creating and altering its genetic structure only through the lab. We're not talking about hybridization, which happens naturally anyway. We're talking about modifying the DNA sequence and the genetic material through laboratory experiments. And then that new seed being patented and then being owned by a corporation. And then, you know, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but the film of Percy Schneider and his kōrero in Canada, when he planted, so organic farmer for a very long time, grain farmer, hundreds of acres, had Monsanto grain crops, GE, in his community on another farm, and then the wind blew them into his farm and Monsanto took him to court. And it took about probably 15 years for Percy to work through this. He's just passed away, unfortunately. Monsanto went after him for not having got the license to grow these crops. So when our food system is controlled by technology and science and an intellectual property system that is based on theft and corporate profit, that just got me fired up. And so instead of being fired up, because that's really draining, isn't it, to be fired up, I was looking for those positive spaces to go. And that was Huaparakore, that was Te Waka Kaiora, that was all those beautiful Māori organic growers who are doing their things. And quite isolated, actually. You know, the organic food and farming sector is quite small in New Zealand. But for Māori who are plugging away doing this, I really, really acknowledge them, because it's quite hard and lonely work. And having worked in the environment space and research and done a bit of work with Māori agri-businesses, we're very conventional in our farming methods. We're still spraying, we're still overstocking, you know, we're not working with cover crops and all of these new methodologies. So there, you know, I feel, I don't know, I might be wrong, I feel like I'm talking at a local level here, you know, knowing Kawati, these 60, 70 acres of syntropic that you've got going in, and, you know, I imagine people have got marakai or community gardens at Koanga and Kura or at Marae that you're involved with. But on a bigger level, for Māori land in Aotearoa, I mean, the Māori trustee is still spraying glyphosate on land. So we need these types of interventions to be made. You know, I'm getting racked up again, so I'll just go back to the Huaparakore kaupapa. I think I think, you know, like how you can seed it in your community is just contact. Join Te Waka Kaiora on Facebook. You know, contact us and say, look, you know, might get a group of Māori food growers together. We're interested in the Hua Parakore. We probably have to Zoom it, but we'll just tūhono and we'll just see where we get to. It's about building communities. And we want to do that in really deliberate and careful ways. Yeah.
We've got another partai that kind of ties into what you were talking about in terms of, you know, the kind of food technology space. Interested to hear your whakaaro. Food technology is a huge industry. How do things like synthetic meat, plant-based meat substitute, and highly processed food production fit in with Māori kai sovereignty?
Yeah, I think there has to be a diversity of viewpoints. Obviously, our own subjectivities contribute to this around how we define what Māori food sovereignty is. I would really be asking the question around the number of inputs and processes to produce synthetic meats, you know, plant-based meats and those types of things. And so is this, are we just, because those types of meats and those types of products circulate again within those global capitalist flows of the food system. So they've been developed through food technologies, and these aren't a bad thing. These are not genetically modified. These are just new innovations within the food industry, which is a massive industry. I mean, look at all the processed foods about the place. But we know processed foods aren't our friends. We know that that's not returning to eat our cultural landscapes. So if we want to eat plant-based foods, we should just eat plant-based food from nature. That's what I would say in a Hua Parakore framework.
Kia ora. Yeah, tautoko. Another question here from Takoha. What are some practical tips for whānau living in urban settings and small compact environments?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, really good question. So if you're an apartment, for example, I'd get some planter boxes or even pallets. They don't have to look too hoity, the pallets. You can do things to, you know, you put a pallet on its side, and you can fill the gaps with soil if you put some plastic or something underneath it. Even growing in, we're just about to try this actually, even growing in old guttering is really, can be really good as well to grow little seedlings like basil and lettuces. Wicking beds. So wicking beds don't require any watering from the top. They kind of, you know, you put in a wicking bed, you're putting a whole lot of different sized stones in there or gravel in there, and then a layer of almost like fabric or like fabric, and then the soil on top. And what happens is that the plants draw up the moisture from underneath. So for people who are in urban environments and might be away a bit for work and stuff like that, then that's a great idea for being able to get food on the go if you're not around. Connecting with local Māori food producers, you know, so if you can't grow food yourself, then where are the local Māori food gardens around? I know in Auckland, South Auckland, Papatūānuku Marae, Hua Parakore Verified, they're feeding the whānau hard at the moment, but they've got beautiful, you know, all their kumaras are in, they've got beautiful things going on there. So, you know, I think I've been talking about a food system from a producer level, but we all have a role as a consumer, to be able to support and uplift Māori food economy. So look for your Māori producers, and maybe approach the council. We're kind of beginning to work on this in Wellington to see if there's council land where we can start a Hua Parakore urban Māori food farm. So I'm just an envy at Kai Cycle and what the Pākehā food farmers are doing. I'm like, where's our Māori food farm? So how can we actually grow a Māori food farm? And then how can we grow and teach Māori food farmers to grow in bio-intensive Hua Parakore ways? Yeah. Awesome.
And just picking up on the whole soil fertility and the abundance of soil, and any kōrero thoughts to share with the whānau around like how we balance, or is there a balance around annual kai versus perennial kai? Maybe defining what those are and how they interact with us and our nutrition, but also in the ways in which we plant to bring back that mauri to the ground, so we're not tilling every year, or we're balancing it in, that kind of kōrero.
Oh yeah, lovely question. Lots of perennials, go the perennials. The annuals are lots of work, especially as you get older and you have to bend over and plant them all the time. So perennials are things that just continue growing. So they might die back over the winter, but then they'll come up year after year. And so over the winter, I was thinking, oh my God, there's not much in the garden. And now we're in spring, it's like, oh, perennials outside, you know, I've got fennel, lemon balm, sage, marjoram, lots of tansy. You know, there's the wildflower mix from last year's all coming up again. And what this means is that I don't have to disturb the soil at all. The soil's providing an abundance of herbs and food. Diversity, we know diversity is good, not just above the ground and for our gut, but under the soil as well. So perennials are great. Having lots of perennials in a garden means that you can create light wells amongst them to actually grow your annuals. So you're doing that polycropping method again. So, you know, I've really gone off the straight rows, lots of bare dirt, all of that type of growing, to actually now, how can we create that food forest, that ngāhere type of environment for our food to grow? So with annuals, you know, you've got the issue of, do you buy them? Where do you buy them from? Are you going to Mitre 10? Where did the seed come from? Don't then know the whakapapa of the seed. And it's expensive, right? Like you go to Mitre 10 and you put 6, 7, 8 things in your trolley and it's like $50 plus. So this is why for us up here, we're thinking an Indigenous or a Hua Parakore seedling community supported agriculture boxes would be really helpful for whānau. So that one, you know, because this is what we do in the everyday up here is think about Hua Parakore and, you know, growing food. Then it means that we can assure whānau will begin to share that kōrero around where the seed has come from and the whenua that it's been grown on, and then take that tikanga or take that kawa, take that kōrero, share that kōrero as we share seedlings out with whānau, and then they can pick it up from there. Yeah.
We also have a question from I think my healthy families Rotorua. Raweo kōrero, does meat feature in your diet? And you know, a lot of us Māori love our meaty. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, it does now. I was a vegetarian for a very, very long time, probably about 20 years. And meat has come back into my diet since we started to home kill on the farm. And we share all of our home kill. No, you're not supposed to do this, but out with whānau, because that saves my dad and my mum and my whānau heaps of money. Don't have to go to the supermarket. And also too, you know, supermarket meat is just not, yeah, I mean, when we're on a farm, we've got organic meat and we buy the sheep, the lambs off our neighbour. I know what he breeds from. You know, they literally opens one gate and they walk into our paddock and they're there for 5 or 6 months. So, yeah, meat does feature. I think at heart, my true heart is a vegetarian. I'm also too a yoga teacher. So I have this other thing going on with the 8 limbs of yoga. But I also too think flexibility is really important in the way that we think about things. So not to be too attached. So yeah, long-winded question. Yes, we're eating meat at the moment. True hearts are vegetarians. And now we've got all these vegetables. There's really no chance on our plate for meat at the moment.
No, awesome. Just on that note, in terms of like practical tips and where to start for those people who are just starting out or would like to start out on this huarahi, what are some, I've got a question here. Loving the kōrero, do your books have any info about polycropping and what tupu we can plant together, or do you have any suggestions of where we can find out more information about that? Again, are there any books or groups, starting points you would recommend for those who are just starting out as pipi in this space and planting their mahinga kai?
Yeah, ka pai, great question. And I see Marissa, kia ora Marissa, has put in the chat about the Kai Oranga certificate at Awanuiarangi. That's a really good place to have a look, you know, a really good course to have a look at. I think it's level 3 or 4. It's built around the Hua Parakore kaupapa, and it gives you lots of practical opportunities to implement that on your mara through going through that Kai Oranga program. My first book, Mahi Mara Hua Parakore, has got some companion planting, polycropping advice in it. What I'd really recommend is my partner's doing it at the moment is the Earthworkers course, which is run by For the Love of Bees. And they are part of the Urban Food Farmers Alliance, and very soil science based. And we're interested in learning from that course the soil science to kind of repackage it in a pedagogical way that works for our people, because yeah, I mean, my PhD's in science, but that's really enough to make you go to, you know, make you turn off and look at your phone, really. Too much chemistry on a Saturday morning. But these things are really important to understand. So yes, the planting of everything, but when we really get to understand the soil and how it works and what different roles, different chemical compositions play, what they do in the soil, then that really changes how we think about growing food. So For the Love of Bees, the Earthworkers program, the Urban Food Farmers Alliance, they're all connected. And then hopefully, you know, midway through next year, we'll have a course up here and people can come here as well. And we'd really love to be able to train trainers to take the course back out to their own community. So you don't have to keep coming back here, but you're in a supportive network of people to be able to think about growing your practices.
Awesome. We've got a question here around your own mentors in this space. Can you give us a little quarter around who were your mentors and those influences who influenced you?
Oh, I think my biggest political mentors in this space are Vandana Shiva and Moana Jackson. And I was at a food conference, Hui, with both of them, I think maybe about 8 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, both of my idols are in the room and I'm having lunch with them at the same time. Vandana Shiva, some of you might know her work, and if not, I really encourage you to have a look online at her writings. Just such a sharp political analysis around what's happening with our food systems, with monocultured agriculture, with the ongoing theft through monopolies and corporates, global corporates, of everything Indigenous around our food systems. And also too, for me, being Indian from Gujarat, it's really lovely to have that Indian connection. I've had the privilege of being in India and connecting with movements like Diverse Women for Diversity, who run the Navdanya, the seed saving movement in India. People might be aware that farmer suicides in India just went through the roof when they introduced GMBT cotton, and it really impacted severely on farmers' livelihood. Not only did it lock farmers into having to buy this terrible BT GM cotton seed, but then they needed to buy the licensed inputs like pesticides and fertilizers, chemical fertilizers that could be used on there. So your whole production system is all locked up in this kind of money and contractual agreement. And what happens then is that farmers, people, food communities, we lose all our freedoms. We've lost our freedom around seed. We've lost our freedom around how we look after the land. We've lost our freedom and diversity within our food system. And these are the things that Vandana Shiva writes about. So there's her on one side and then there's Moana on the other side. And I mean, just think we're so privileged to have these amazing rangatira around who have worked across so many movements of protest and activism, with right at the heart of it always rangatiratanga manamotuhaki. Doesn't matter what it is. And so just having rocks like that where you can go, actually, half of Te Ao Māori might now be thinking, geez, a good thing, I'm still holding my ground. You know, I'm going to be the outlier here because people aren't raising their voices on it. But I look at Moana and I think, oh, yeah, I'm going to hold my ground. So definitely mentors for me. When we bought this piece of land, I knew I needed to have some type of framework for managing it. And there were no Māori organic farming courses or anything like that around. So I went to biodynamics. I went to Taruna College in Napier and studied organic agriculture and biodynamic farming. And biodynamics really works for me. It's very Wairua based. It's very vibrational based. It's all about divine senses. Yes, you could get into all the soil chemistry and all of that stuff about it, but really what it does through the application of preparations like 500, stirring cow poo that's been buried in the ground for 6 months in a horn. And then after 6 months, you take it out of the ground, and then you take a little handful of it, like a homeopathic quantity, and put it in a bucket of water, and then you're stirring that for an hour, creating this vortex so that you can basically look down to the bottom of the bucket, and then you take your hand out and you let that vortex spin, and then you put your hand back in and break that vortex and create chaos, and then spin it back round the other way. And what we're doing there is we're creating memory, we're creating vibration, we're creating memory and vibration of the microbiology that's been in that very special cow horn. There's a whole silica component in there. And then we apply that preparation over the land. And what the biodynamic method does for me, and similar to the Huaparakore, is it puts you as a nature being with nature. So you're not above nature, but you're working with her, and really we become the mediator. All we are is we're just the mediator of caretaking, of looking after, of doing things. And so that pathway for me, Peter Proctor, who's also too now passed away, was probably the leader of biodynamics in Aotearoa. And the biodynamic movement has just taken off in Gujarat in India. And I can understand why. I think a couple of years ago we were at the biodynamic farm in Gujarat, and it was just phenomenal what was going on there. But of course the cow's sacred, and it's revered as sacred. And so to be able to use cow manure, which has gone through the 4 chambers of the cow, so it's digested in a way that is just magic. It's absolutely magic. And to be able to work with that preparation in that revered way, I can understand why biodynamics really relates in Indian cultures. Yeah.
Amazing. That really kind of reminds me and brings me back to, the connection that we have. And we're talking about this in all our kaupapa. Kia whai hono ngā tātou, kia tātou ki ngā mātauranga, ngā mātua tūpuna, tātou ki taiao. And I think, in our modern age, we live in boxes, we sleep in boxes, we drive in other boxes to work in other boxes. And in our other box that we work in, we're working within these screens of boxes. So it's like this method, the methods and all of the ways that we grow our kai, personally, it's our hands touching the earth. And generally, people buy their kai and they have no idea about the whakapapa. So like diving into that, maybe talking a bit more about that connection and the importance of that too, and also just wanting to highlight that buzzword around, if we're talking about connections, the mycelium. Can you give us a quarter about mycelium and how that kind of relates to us as Māori and our ideologies and whakatauki and pūrākau and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, mycelium. Yeah, where do you start with that? I wish I could take you all outside and show you these amazing mushrooms that are popping up everywhere. And we keep saying, I think we can eat these. Can we eat these? We really need to check before we can eat these. They look edible. They really do look edible. But mycelium, what an amazing thing. It's whanaungatanga under the ground at the highest level. It's whakapapa in action. It's Māori at its fullest potential. The idea of, mycelium are the fungal networks that occur under the ground. So they're fungi based. And they're, you might see them if you've got mulch on the ground or when you pull something out of the garden and you can see the white strands of things. This is mycelium. And it connects all across the whenua. So I've got mycelium networks from here that'll stretch all the way up to where Kawati is, or where that beautiful background is behind you. This is the interconnected, woven universe below the soil that we trample over with absolute disregard in the everyday. So we're really into mushrooms here. We are, in a good way, just saying. We've this year or last year put some dowels, some mushroom spores into some logs, and we've also too started a mushroom bed just to see what comes up. They're very slow growing, like it takes about 12 to 18 months from when you've first put those spores in. But I think mushrooms for us, when basically nothing grows outside during winter, but we could do them in the polytunnel maybe over the winter months. And so for us, it's about thinking about how can we really celebrate that mycelium network above the earth, because a mushroom is just a fruiting body. That's all it is. It's just a fruiting body of a mycelium network that's been busy doing all of its things. I think of mycelium networks as like superhighways. So it's like this whole interconnected web of this superhighway, and this is what we're wanting to build through really good soil practices. So tilling, digging, turning the dirt over, even things like I had to stop myself from doing it last night, actually, like getting the little hand trail in and go, oh, I'll make the garden look pretty. I'll just dig all around the plants. Like, no, don't do that, because it breaks up these mycelium networks. It disturbs the microbiology. It's almost like breaking up a whānau. So we really want to, as little soil disturbance as possible. So for us, like to look after mycelium networks, that means chop and drop, which will be what Kawati's onto with the syntropic food forest. Chop and drop, be careful. I accidentally kind of macheted my thumb on the weekend. So chop and drop, don't pull anything out by the roots, and you know, cut your lettuces at the base. You should get 3 or 4 growths off it. Even a fennel can grow back 3 times. Spring onions do that. Kind of think, oh, there's our kai, I'm going to harvest it now, but actually you can get a lot of plantings over that. And then when it's completely done and there's no more growth on it or food going to be produced from it, just chop it at soil level and leave it in the ground, because that dying root structure, even if it's got a big tap root, is all food for the microbiology. And if you pull it out, you're going to disturb the mycelium networks and the soil microbiology. Hiniahone just needs a light touch. She actually doesn't need any, you know, she doesn't need very much at all. We're the ones who come along and do damage to her with all of the soil disturbance.
That reminds me of the Avatar movie and plugging into Iowa. And that's, yeah, really, really interesting. If we're thinking about back in the days of our tupuna and their practices around growing kai, would it be true that the soil fertility or abundance of the earth would be such that they wouldn't have had to do much of, or versus nowadays where we've extracted so much out of the soil and that the mauri, I suppose, of Hiniahone is depleted? How do we find ways? I mean, you've already talked about it, but you know, all of these rautaki, these strategies of growing kai, is that also bringing back that mauri? I'm trying to think of frameworks for us as Māori to think about these things. You know, the biomimicry that some of these strategies talk about. How can we frame them in a way? You've already done it, you know, the mycelium, that's the whānau connections, you know, succession in all these agri-food syntropy systems, you know, whanaungatanga te mahi teina tuakana. Is there any whakatauki that you keep using in your own mahi around these frames?
Oh, probably. I'd have to have a good think about that. Not off the spot, but thank you. I think it's all there, isn't it? You know, like biomimicry. When I remember buying a book about that when I was, you know, in that terrible academic phase of my life, thinking, oh, this is interesting. And I read it and went, oh, this is just Indigenous knowledge. What is this? And, you know, a whole lot of white academics are making a whole discourse out of how we think anyway. So again, for us as Māori, Indigenous people, we know we come back to our own kaupapa. We've got all the frameworks and, you know, all of the ways to talk about everything that's going on in syntropic or biomimicry or polycropping. And the Hua Parakore just provides a framework for us to do that, yeah. Just in terms of that earlier question about our tupuna, you know, our tupuna were foragers, hunters and gatherers. And to be able to return to eat our cultural landscapes in New Zealand is a really difficult thing to do when 30% of our ngahere is locked up behind the walls of the conservation estate. So we actually don't have access in a lot of areas to our best kai from the ngahere. And I have a real beef with the Department of Conservation about that, because I think in terms of our food systems, it's not just what we can grow, mara kai, but it's about being able to return to the ngahere to be able to harvest in sustainable ways. you know, some of the methods that our tūpuna use, we were talking about it last night, trying to think about how to get the heat up in the soil, you know, putting rocks in the soil. Our tūpuna did that. They mounded up their kumara and their kamo to be able to, one, for water retention. So when we create a mound and we water at the top, the water's not kind of just all flattening off and spreading out, but actually it's being directed down to the root. But the other thing is also too, by building a mound, we are creating a structure. It's just like piling things up and planting on the top, creating a structure which retains heat. And then if you need more heat, put some rocks around it. You know, so those really amazing volcanic soils in South Auckland just do so well. You know, volcanic rock in there, retaining heat. Yeah, good loams for growing. Yeah.
Awesome. And on that kind of political kaupapa, we've got a pātai or a bit of a koho from one of our attendees, Ngamihi Te Rangatira, I feel. And how does Māori food sovereignty fit into the wider kind of climate change issue that we're facing? Feel parakore mahinga kai is sometimes a waste of time. Dairy farmers are dumping their cow teko into our waterways, and methane produced by the agricultural industry is rife. The IPCC 2021 report confirms global warming, seas are rising, longer, hotter droughts, extreme rainfall, colder winters, earthquakes. It's going to get worse and worse for us over the next 30 years. And a huge part of that is agriculture. This section hasn't modernized. It's old and destructive. He hau whakaaro.
Oh my gosh, so much. That's why I want to write this new book. Yeah, all of that. Where my focus is at the moment is about walking the talk and being confident about that, and then being able to share it. And so I think we have to start in our own, you know, in our own place. And for us here, that's in our kāinga with our whānau and on this piece of whenua that we're on, to show that there's different ways of doing it and different practices. I have heaps of connections and work across like Māori organic parakore growers, organic growers, you know, food farmers, people who work in community gardens, and there's a movement happening out there. It's kind of like, come and join us, come and join us. I think the thing for me is I have to work out, and probably for many of you as well in the work that you're all doing, how much, you know, because what we're doing is Indigenous, there's so much call on us to kind of Indigenise and brown up the white organic sector. And so I just have to work out, you know, there's so much call. You could literally do a full-time job in it, but then actually we haven't furthered our own kaupapa. So that's about, you know, coming to know in ourselves our own balance, isn't it, about what serves and what doesn't serve. But I think being really clear about the kaupapa that we're on, and then what our job is in service of that kaupapa would be something that we need to do. Yeah, I've been watching the COP meetings and listening to some of the kōrero, and it's pretty dire. But I think this is why we need to build resilient local Māori food systems, you know, Māori-led food systems, because that is our resiliency, is working together and supporting our whānau that are in urban environments, and finding ways to reach out and connect with them and to be able to share food. Yeah.
That's beautiful last words, Whai. Just want to say thank you again. E mihi kaua ke ana ki a koe, I o tini mahi nui, me ngā rauemi, kei o ringa hei kai, ma te katoa. So big mihi to you. Thank you for joining us and for the kōrero that you've given to us today.